Ben's ready?
Yeah.
Okay. At this time, we will call this meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee DeBoer. Here. Trustee Trudgell.
Here.
Trustee Pfeiffer.
Here.
Trustee Washleger. Here. Trustee Connor.
Here.
Trustee Halquist.
Here.
President Vanderstel.
Here. If you'd all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Trustee DeBoer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we will have public comments for anybody that would like to speak in public comments.
Good evening, Donna Doro, 1041 Eaton Court. I am just here to speak briefly on the sign policy, which I know has gotten postponed or it's going to be tabled. It's slated to be tabled today, but I did not get I did not see the amended, so I didn't know it. So I'm still going to actually give my feedback on it, just so hopefully when it does come back up, you guys look into it more. I know that the concern was that it was for the First Amendment and following the First Amendment and how that portrays to this ordinance. And per the state statute 12.04 in section A, in B, in addition to regulation under the paragraph A, the municipality may regulate the sizes, the shapes, the placement of a sign exceeding 11 square feet in an area. So we do have the right to regulate what size those signs are. I just have to think what a 32 square foot sign would look like in this village if everybody started putting these up. Because Hector's letter to you guys before, in front of the ordinance that he wrote in there, he cites a few cases, the Reed case, and that has to do with religion. So that's the church. Well, the church has the right to put a 32 square foot sign up too then. So I just want everyone, when this comes out, to really think about it. If we're gonna protect one, we're gonna have to protect them all. If we're going under, especially saying the First Amendment, that protects church right away. So, and the freedom of speech, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have 32 square feet signs. So that's just my thoughts. I hope you all look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No one on Zoom. Anybody else that wants to speak in public comment? All right. The first item on the agenda are comments from the municipal judge, Timothy Kay, regarding the Lake Country Municipal Court. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. President, and trustees for letting me make a brief appearance once again this year. So I'd like to just give you a little annual state of the court update. Pass out some copies of my letter. You may have received it already in your packets. I don't know, but I have extra copies. Basically, our court, which you are a member of, 20 members belong to our court. We're the largest joint municipal court in the state. I'd like to brag about that. We've collected over $2,200,000 in fines. That money for the year is returned to a portion to the state of Wisconsin, Waukesha County. Our court, we keep a portion for our budget, and the rest is all returned to the municipality. When we did our budget in the beginning of the year, our budget people and Chief Weimer, he always kind of calculates that we're going to be in the red. Every year we're supposed to be in the red, but every year we're magically in the black. So we had a little bit of a surplus this year. According to my unofficial non-accounting numbers, it's about $79,000. So very proud of that fact. The reasons why we are in the black, and we say that for our future needs fund, whatever, is because number one, our citation numbers are up. It's post-COVID, so the police are back doing to what they normally did before COVID. When COVID was around, everybody had a chilling effect, and the police kind of laid a little bit lower. So now they're back up to regular levels. Not that there is a definite level, but you can just tell there's more citations. But the biggest reason for our increase is because we joined State Department of Collections. I may have mentioned it last year, but this was the first full year, so we've had about a year and a half of SDC. State Department of Collections is a division of the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. They literally are the government. run by the governor, and they can go into your checking or savings account and intercept funds, your tax returns. When I talk to kids in court on Friday, sometimes they don't get what a savings and checking account is, so I tell them they can go into your debit card. Oh, yeah, they get that. So we collected, since we started, about $178,000 of old debt. So that's not money that we keep for our court. If that's old debt from, your village or the city or village of, whatever, it goes back to those municipalities. So this year, for the year, revenue back to your village was about $82,000. It's about what it was last year, but slightly more because I think of SDC. Now, I mention it because, again, we do not ever ask, or have not asked in many, many years, for the villages or towns or cities to participate in our budget. So we keep $33 per citation. I have my little chart at the back, the circle chart, explains what happens to our money that comes in. 25% goes to the state because they are the state. Yeah, there it is. And we exist because the state says we get to exist, so that's what they get. 8% goes to the Waukesha Jail. 27% goes to our budget, Lake Country Municipal Court. 40% back to the villages and towns. So we live on that 27%. Our budget is about $340,000. It's probably a resolution that you guys passed recently. So that pays for me, the 4 clerks. We have 2 full-time clerks now, 2 part-time clerks, so the 4 clerks, rent, insurance, copy machine, all this stuff. So, again, we don't come back and ask for any participation into that fund. Our new courthouse is working great. This is our second full year there, and can't talk enough about enough space for all the clerks to work. Our old place was in a room about smaller than from me to that wall, and about yay wide, but we had 4 people crammed in there, plus me. So I would share a desk with the clerks. So now we all have our own space, and we have our court, or my office, when we designed the courtroom, we designed it to be as a double for juvenile court proceedings. So it's right next to the courtroom, my chambers. We use that to have our kids and our juveniles appear in private. So we walk back there with the bailiff and the parents, whatever, and we get a lot done that way. And kids are a little bit more at ease when we sit at the same table. It's a round table. Might not mean much to you guys, but we're all kind of fair. We're not like the mean old judge, yelling at these kids. So some get yelled at, but our bailiffs are wonderful. We contract with the Waukesha sheriffs. We had our city officer, James Schuyler, who's always been there, Deputy Corey Farrell, Captain Michelle Loeffler, Detective Tim Wacker, and another city officer, Jim Fidlin, so they kind of fill in and keep things moving smoothly. And we're working on a new website this year, so that should be coming out probably in a couple of weeks. I think we wanted to roll it out beginning of March. And there was a bug or two, and they're working on the old domain name and the new name, and I don't quite get it, but we're working on it. But otherwise, things are going well. We've had many motions and trials. I'll just, say for the record that your officers always do a fine job when they come and represent the village of Hartland. Never had any problems with any of your officers. They're always respectful, kind to the citizens, and the kind of officers that even when a citizen loses in court, they'll usually walk over and shake the officer's hand and understand that, we're all friends, we all live here, and sometimes a speeding ticket's a speeding ticket, it's not everything, so. Otherwise, if you have any hard questions, you can give me a call, but if you have really hard ones, call my clerk, Terry Berlin, or pass them on to Chief Misko, and he can ask Terry, and, things are going great, so if you have any questions, let me know, or thanks for letting me show up once a year. Appreciate it.
Much. Thanks, Judge Gay. Thank you. Now we have consideration of village board minutes of the February 13th, 2023 meeting, and also the special village board minutes of the February 15th, 2023 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the Board minutes of February 13th, 2023, and a special village board minutes of February.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from February 13th and February 15th meetings. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Now we have consideration of items related to the vouchers. Consideration of vouchers for payments in the amount of $359,292.86.
I'll make a motion to approve vouchers in the amount of $359,292.86.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to pay the vouchers for $359,292.86. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Now we have bartender licenses. William James, Deborah Warner, Adam Nanetti, Larry Stoltz, and Brianna Ruth Shockley. These have successfully completed the responsible beverage service course.
Motion to approve the operator's license of names said.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the list of names for operators, bartenders licenses. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Now we have a consideration and an issue with a bartender's license that was previously approved. You have information on your packet. Something made it to the board. I'm going to let Chief touch on it if that's all right, because it made it to the board without his signature. Chief?
Thank you. Yes, this is operator license in regards to Alyssa Schmidt. I don't believe Alyssa's here. So she was aware of this meeting and aware of the circumstances outlined in the memo. But as President Vanderstel explained back on January 23rd at our village board meeting, this operator license made it to the village board and had not been reviewed on the background. And as you look at her background, you'll see that she did have a OWI, or operating while intoxicated, arrest. And that would be on February 26, 2022. So that would be a first offense, operating while intoxicated offense. Now, I ended up calling Alyssa when we noticed that the background was not completed on her behalf, and it had gone in front of the village board without their knowledge that the background was not completed. And I explained to her all those circumstances and that it would have to go back in front of the village board with a proper background. She stated that she understood. She actually informed me that she planned on calling the village hall to let them know to hold her application until February 27th meeting, tonight's meeting, because she was under the impression that after 12 months from date of arrest was the policy of the board, so that she could then submit her application, be outside of that 12 months by 1 day, and then hopefully be approved for the operator license. I did read to her the current policy that was in the application for the operator license. It speaks to conviction. I know there's been some debate on that from the board. That's a board policy. That's not a state statute defined criteria. So that's definitely up to the board on arrest, conviction, whatever your policy may be. It doesn't matter either to the police department in this particular case because it was a first offense. It wasn't a habitual OWI, but it would be per that policy that's outlined in the packet, denied unless outside of 12 months from date of conviction. Her date of conviction was November 16th, 2022. So obviously it took a couple months to work that through the court, which is typical. So I informed her that this would be coming to this meeting for this particular discussion. I know the village clerk had also sent correspondence and let her be aware that this meeting was to occur on tonight's village board agenda. So you have a couple options. One, you can deny the operator license, do that first offense with the conviction date of November 16, 2022, being that it was within the last 12 months. Or you can obviously approve it due to her first offense arrest happening on February 26, 2022, and that would then just be slightly more than that 12-month period. The only thing I would ask, if the board does feel like they don't want to wait for that conviction date, then I would say we should update our application packet if that is the direction the board goes. Like I said, I know there's been some debate, but I don't know if we've ever thoroughly vetted out arrest versus conviction.
I also want to add, and we talked a little bit, we talked with Chief today, but one thing that I'm still a little confused on is that I'm not sure if the license was granted, signed for, and then given. I believe we may have to actually, now if she doesn't fight it, we probably could just pull it, but I believe that the proper procedure is actually a revocation process.
I'll let the village clerk confirm what I'm about to say, but my understanding is it was caught before it was actually written up and delivered. So there's been
Okay.
no transfer of license.
The license wasn't delivered.
So it was approved by the village board, and then the very next day, I believe the deputy clerk caught that my signature wasn't on the paperwork and then
Correct.
sent it back down to me for that review.
Yes, that is correct.
So this person isn't serving anywhere in Hartland with a license. I mean, they might be where someone else is the operator, but,
Correct, they
Got
do
it.
not have a signed license.
Okay.
And they are aware that they would have to come back in front of the board per our conversation.
got it, perfect. So I don't know what we want to do on this. I know we keep on running back and forth into this. I just don't know.
We have to be standard with that. I mean, we can't do it one way for one, and so if we go with the conviction date of the offense, then we have to stay with that.
Okay. We can as a board. I just thought it was a good idea that the board decides, because if someone's convicted of, or if someone's charged with something, and if it takes, and I talked with Chief about this, I mean, some of these, it could take a year and a half, depending on what happened, and another one could be 4 months, and that's a big I'm not against how we do it, but I do agree with you, whatever we do, we have to be consistent and really hold that line. But if we're going with conviction date, I just wanted the board to be aware, there will be times when you could have somebody you have someone that's like, yeah, I did it, my bad, I did it, and you know what I mean, they're gaining time, and you have someone else that's like, hey, I think something was wrong here. I'm just saying, if they, I don't really care.
Well, we just had the one a couple weeks ago where we approved it, and it was because there wasn't a conviction yet, right? So they had a ticket, but until they were proven guilty.
But we did tell her that if she
If she
was
was found
proven
guilty,
guilty,
right.
it would be revoked.
Right.
Exactly.
So if
But
we're gonna
again,
stick,
based on
I think Adam was
conviction.
agreeing with you
Yes,
and saying it's
yes.
Yeah,
based on the
just based on
conviction.
conviction.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
I think we need to stick with, like you say, I think
and if we
Ann's-
want to look at it in the future, I think that we could,
And
but
I
it
don't
would
think
have
we,
to,
if we're in agreement, I mean, we can, but I don't think we need to. If we were gonna go with conviction date, then we,
Then we
you know,
stick
we
with
stick
it.
with it.
okay.
Conviction makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Okay.
I make a motion to deny the bartender's license for Lisa Schmidt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to deny the bartender's license for Lisa Schmidt. I'm just gonna ask the motion maker for the record to explain, just to state why you're denying.
Oh,
Since we're-
I'm denying it because her conviction date is less than 12 months.
Got it. Any discussion? All in favor of the denial? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Chief, you'll correspond with that person or some,
But between the village clerk and I will make sure she understands that it
Perfect.
was denied.
okay. The next item we have, consideration of an application for a Class A beer license for the premises located at 700 Hartbrook Drive. This is Colburn's Car Wash, Brian Colburn. This is the gas station that's right up there on Merton and Hartbrook. If you want to step up, I'm not sure if anybody will have any questions. This is for on-premises sales, so this is not like serving up open intoxicants. This is for serving, you know, beer and I'm guessing, I think seltzers also
Yeah,
fall into that?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm Brian Colburn, owner of Colburn's Car Wash, and I submitted an application back in June last summer, and I was approved by the board. I had a pending sale going on where the guy who was gonna buy it did not want me to get liquor or beer, I guess technically, at the site, so I just kinda held off. I mean, I've ran it for 17 years without having it, it's not the end of the world. But now I think it's time, and so I guess I resubmitted it and came back for reapproval.
You have nothing, do you, Chief? No reservations?
I do not. I think it's a typical request for an establishment like that for the convenience factor,
Yep.
and we don't have any issues that I would have to bring to the board to say otherwise.
Okay. For this,
Does he have to come back then in June to redo it? Or is-
no, but we have to have a public hearing now.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted
I
to
just had a
hear
question on it.
from Chief. So at this time, if you want to just step away just for the public, so they don't feel intimidated by you. For this to move forward, there would have to be a public hearing before any consideration of an action could be considered. So at this time, I will open the public hearing for the consideration of hearing public comments for Colburn's Car Wash to have a Class A beer license for the premises located at 700 Hartbrook Drive, if anybody would like to come and speak. Wait just like 30 seconds. It never looks good when it's like it opened, the public hearing opened at 6:51 and closed at 6:51. So at this time, though, last call, anybody want to speak? Okay. We will close the public hearing, but it was held. So at this time, it would be appropriate that some type of action or comment would be given on why we are taking no action.
I will make a motion that we approve the Class A beer license for Colburn's Car Wash.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Class A beer license for Colburn's Car Wash. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. The next item that we have is consideration of a temporary operator's license. This is for Ronald Nolan. This is for the Chamber of Commerce annual annual dance.
I'll make a motion to approve Ronald Nolan's temporary operator's license for the Chamber of Commerce annual dance.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve that temporary operator's license. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Now we have a consideration of a restricted species permit. Are they here? If you'd like to come forward to the podium, please. If you want to just give a brief description of why you're requesting the restricted species permit.
Well, we didn't realize, first of all, that there's a restriction on how many dogs you could have. So that's one. And they're actually registered as emotional support dogs.
The application says exceeded the maximum number of animals allowed at any one permitted species. How many dogs are on the property?
There's four.
Are they
Two
all
are mine
emotional
and
support
two are
dogs?
hers, yeah.
All four are
Yeah.
emotional support dogs?
That was done last year.
Any instances with the dogs, are they licensed?
Yep.
Yes, we actually have statements from our neighbors. We actually live right on the trail and have had a lot of comments on how well they're behaved and how well they're trained and how well they stay in our yard. We've got neighbors saying that, I mean, I can read it to you.
Or you could bring copies.
Exactly, whatever
You
you
want
guys would
copies?
prefer. So as neighbors, they have not seen or had any issues with the dogs. They're very well behaved and they don't leave the yard. Joe and Jenna frequently play with them. With small children in our home, we walk the path while his dogs are playing with no issues. Another neighbor gave his name and address. Joe's dogs don't leave the yard. I've never seen aggressive behavior towards dogs, children, or adults. I have no issues with his dogs. Another one of our neighbors, they've never been a problem on our street. They always stay on their property, even with my 4 children and their friends playing and riding their bikes on our property and along the adjacent Hart Ridge walking pathway. Anytime I've seen them outside while residents walk around the path, the dogs have never bothered them, and they even if they have another dog with them. And then another family said that we always found your dogs to be extremely well behaved, well trained, and well taken care of. We have 2 dogs that interact with yours on multiple occasions, and your dogs were very respectful and friendly to ours, even when we had a tiny excited puppy.
Have you had these dogs licensed in the village of Hartland since you've owned them? Have you had them licensed every single year?
Yes.
And what, are they 4 years old?
2 or 4 and 2 or 3.
So, okay, so you've had them licensed for the 4 years and 3 years.
And 2. I think 2 of them.
There's been no incidences? Chief, has there been anything?
If I could give the board a little history of how this came about, back in August, actually August 29th of 2022, we received a phone call from a lady that was walking by the residence. The dogs did come off the property. It caused her to be startled. She fell to the ground and screamed. Dogs ran right back to the property. So the dogs did not attack her, nothing like that, but they did come off the property. She fell, she screamed, dogs ran back. They decided to call the police department the next day to let us know about what happened and asked for us to just make contact with the owners to let them know this happened, just so that they can make sure that the dogs don't come off the property. Officer did make contact and explained that situation, and then at that point, they found out that their current dogs weren't licensed, and then that they were up to 4 dogs. And I believe they were under the understanding it was only 2 before that. So the officer, like we do in these typical cases when licensing comes up, they gave them a period of time to take care of the issues. So they gave them basically a month. On the very last day of September, the officer actually wrote the citation for both licensing of the dog and then the number of dogs on the property. But Mr. Clark and Ms. Stark did come in to the village hall on that last day and license 2 under each name. So the licensing part was satisfied, so the ticket was voided, but he did issue the number of dogs restriction. We then just followed up because we knew this was an issue. Now that we're in the 2023, officer followed up, saw that the restricted species still was not taken care of. The licensing has been taken care of, but the restricted species amount has not. So he asked both Joe and Jen here to take care of that issue with the village board and gave them this month to do so. And that's when they now have filed the appeal for the board. I can say we've had, other than that one incident, we've really had no other issues with the dogs. Their neighbors are not calling to complain. We haven't had dog at large or barking dog issues. It was just that one event where the lady was startled. And again, that's when the licensing issue came up. So we were just making sure that Mr. Clark and Mrs. Stark came in front of the board to rectify the number of animal licensing issue.
I would like to make one comment, and that complaint was disputed as false, and I think you have that on file, because nobody was home when this supposed incident happened. I provided a text to the police department proving that I was on a job site.
Sure.
So that, I believe that incident was said around noon or 12:30. I was already gone for an hour. So I've had some other issues with people making fictitious complaints about me, and I think that goes to that.
Are the dogs usually leashed when they're outside, or like on a tether when they're outside?
No, they're outside with us or they're in their fenced-in area.
When you say fence, like a hardcore fence or like an invisible fence?
Where they go to the bathroom, it's a physical fence.
So it's not they're confined.
Attached to the back
That's
door
what I
of the
mean.
house,
That's
yeah.
what I mean. So they're not
But
out with
other than that,
where they can just run. even
We're
if it's
playing
a
with them,
fence.
and they don't tell them yard, and they come back.
Okay.
In fact, you can ask Officer Monday, the day that he came by, he observed the dogs. I was outside with them.
Is this a single-family home?
Yeah.
So it's not a duplex? I mean, for me, regardless of it being emotional support animals isn't affecting my decision, other than I don't see any reason that we can't just say that we're allowing them to have the 4 dogs, but not, I don't really think that the decision needs to be based on the emotional support animals, which would open the door to that anybody that comes with this emotional support animals under no limit is allowed then in the future of the village.
I believe that the way we have done this in the past, when people come to us and they have more than the allotted amount of, whether it's 2 cats, 2 dogs, 2 whatever, we have in the past, when it's been just 3, we've never had, I don't think, anybody with 4, but we've said you can keep what you have, but when they pass, you cannot replace them. You can't go above 2. And I think that's what we've done in the past.
I don't think that's a bad recommendation.
I am a dog person, but I think 4 dogs in one house is a lot. Go ahead, I'm done.
Sorry. I just have one question. And it relates to the emotional support companion for the owners and members of the community. So can you explain that?
Sure, I can. So I actually run a home health company called Bright Star Care in Pewaukee. And these animals have actually helped other people in our community that I take care of. I take care of disabled children. My dogs have been able to provide emotional support to them as well, companionship, helping with physical therapy, throwing balls, throwing treats, things like that. So that's why I say that they have helped in our community here.
Straightforward. I'd be in favor. I'd like to make a motion that we allow both of you to have your 4 dogs and
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to allow the restricted species permit, which is for 4 dogs. Discussion.
I would like to see added to the motion that they not be replaced once they do pass up beyond the 2-dog limit that we have. And that we have 1 emotional dog. That way we stay within the limits.
Well, here's the problem with that is she's using those dogs as basically some of her employees,
All 4 of them?
kind of.
Yeah.
We rotate, just it's for their own benefit that we don't keep the same dog with the same with the same clients. 2 dogs are with certain clients, 2 dogs are with other clients, depending on age, mobility, compatibility, things like that.
So are you running this business then out of your home?
No, actually,
Oh.
it's a franchise right out of Pewaukee. There's about 400 Bright Stars all around the United States, up into
Okay.
Canada. We take care of a lot of veterans, a lot of disabled children through Waukesha County and private pay. A lot of people with dementia and physical, mental disabilities.
What we could do, though, is we could have them communicate to us and say that they've lost one and they're going to add one. That way we're aware of it.
One of the things to note here, I just want to throw this in. Chief, please correct me if I'm wrong. When we do these restricted species permits, it's for that dog that is licensed. It's not a revolving typically. I don't think. I could be wrong on that.
That is my understanding of it, is the dogs are defined within the board's approval. And then if those dogs were to pass at some point and they wanted to then go back above the limit, they would do this process over again.
Or
And
to add
explain
to
the
that, if they wanted to
circumstances.
switch dogs, they would need to come because now it's a different dog that may have had an
Okay.
incident and we won't have had any background if the dog, not saying the dog would, but.
Yeah, basically any changes have to
Yep.
come back.
Yep.
makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I think we just stick with
Then
it.
the motion stands.
Yeah.
The motion stands and the clarity, it's been clear to you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The next item that we have on the agenda, I will ask that it be tabled. But we have the second reading for bill for an ordinance 213-2023, an ordinance to amend the Village of Hartland Municipal Code pertaining to signs. And recommend to table the second reading for village attorney review. Yeah, we can. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to make a motion to table the Village of Hartland ordinance second reading on signage in the village to our next village meeting, which is March something. March 13th.
Will he be ready by then?
Well, that's what they said in the memo.
Oh, okay.
Again, we can bring it back. There's just some items in it that that staff want to discuss further with the village attorney to make sure we're going in the right direction.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to table this sign, this ordinance pertaining to signs. Now we have discussion. I do want to touch on something for discussion if no one else has anything. I just want the board to know, when the sign thing came up, last year we had a sign on Capitol Drive that was large. at that time in talking with our attorney, this stuff is not really enforceable when it comes to sign. It can't be based on content. It can be based on signs or size, but it has to be based on the public safety. But I'm just letting you know, there was a constituent that came in front of this board and asked us to look into this issue in May, and so I started addressing it. That same constituent, after we started this, is now saying they're not happy with what we've changed. So I was requesting a 32 square foot because it's gonna police itself. No one's gonna put something larger than that. And the real truth is, even if we put 16 foot, you can take a 4x4 sign, put it a ½ inch away from another 4x4 sign, and just put more stakes in it, and now it's perfectly legal because technically it's 2 signs and not just 1. So to save the village inspector, and the village chief and their department time and resources from people calling, I thought it was best to do something that would police themselves. The board can do whatever they want with it, but we're tabling it, and I'm going to be voting to table it because there's some changes that need to be made. I just wanted the board to be aware that I brought this up in trying to do what the public was asking to. We had a constituent that wanted it, and I am trying to get it in line with what the Supreme Court says. Every single time these go up to the Supreme Court, there are certain rulings that talk about size, but they keep getting struck down. And they say, no, it's someone's First Amendment right. But also the 4x4 ruling, you put it a ½ inch or a ¼ inch away from another sign, now you have 2 4x4 signs. That's considered 2 signs that are 16 square feet. Why not just make it 32? Because otherwise, if they're connected, someone's calling the police saying, go take it down, which is what happened on Capitol Drive. So that was my reasoning for that, but just kind of throwing that out there. Any other discussion? All in favor of tabling? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We have that tabled till next meeting. Now, discussion and consideration of a special events permit for Hartland Kids Day, Lake Country Family Fun. This is on July 26, 2023.
This is our 11th year, so I don't have too much to add or say unless you have specific questions. At the previous meeting that I had with just the Park and Rec Board, we just talked about porta potties and pickleball communication mostly. So the event we are planning is pretty much the same as last year. The format's the same, we're not really changing much. Last year we had moved the shuttle away from the lot over by Sweet Dreams to Lake Country Lutheran, and that alleviated some problems. The police got less phone calls, so that was great. Actually, nobody called the police on me last year, so that was great.
I would hope that they wouldn't.
They do every year except for last year. So, unless you have any questions?
Basically the same as last year.
Basically the same.
Same with garbage and everything. Yeah, it's great for the village. It's really fantastic.
I'll make a motion to approve the event. It's an excellent event, and actually last year was the first year that I had a chance to go and check it out, so it's pretty good.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve what will be the, 11th year of Hartland Kids Day?
Awesome.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great event.
Now we have I won't kid, I was gonna kiddingly say a very short presentation by the Hartland Police Department, but I'm only kidding, Chief. We have a presentation by the Hartland Police Department on their annual report. This was delivered to all of the members of the board.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I believe everyone has a copy of the annual report. I'm just gonna work my way through that, kind of hit up some of the highlights that we were able to capture in 2022. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know either here at the meeting, or we can always follow up afterwards and work through those. But I'm gonna turn your attention, I'm gonna scroll through to page, and they're not numbered, but the second page inside the book, it's our 2022 department highlights. This is an opportunity where we get to highlight some things that are just a little above and beyond our typical police services offered to the village. So some of those highlights include, I was actually able to be selected by my peers and appointed to our WILAG, or Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group, executive board. So that board hears all of the accreditation audits throughout the state of Wisconsin and either approves or denies those. So we're always trying to remain within best practices of our law enforcement standards, and it's a pretty high regard, esteemed group to be a part of, and definitely learning a lot working with all the different police departments that are YLEAG accredited throughout the state of Wisconsin. We had some officers join us last year. We had Officer Kayla Nelson join us back on March 17th. We had Administrative Assistant Nora Centella. She retired from the Hartland Police Department back on May 2nd, 2022, and that was after almost 22 years of service with the Village of Hartland. We also gained Officer Rachel Wendago back in June 6, 2022, and then we promoted or transferred Lori Matilda Barr from part-time to full-time administrative assistant, and then we hired Administrative Assistant Morgan Gergel also on June 6th to fill that void. Officer Conrad Saboniak was promoted to lieutenant on July 30th, quickly followed by Captain Stacy Kelsey's resigning from the Hartland Police Department after almost a little over 14 years of service on August 2nd. And on that same date, we added Officer Tyler Martins to the police department, and he attended our recruit school at the Waukesha County Technical College, graduating on December 8th of 2022. We had a void through a retirement on our Suburban Critical Incident Team tactical operator position. Dean Haig retired at the end of 2021, and we were able to fill that void with Officer Nicholas Greenwood. We also lost our position with our civil disturbance unit. That was our officer that was injured in the line of duty and wasn't able to return both to that unit and then ultimately to the Hartland Police Department. And Officer Matt Shea was appointed to that unit. Officer Dylan Gergel was certified as a drug recognition expert. This is a very labor-intensive, high-standard certification through the law enforcement community. It is one of those that is very rigorous, and you need to pass a high test score to pass, and not everyone in the class does that. So there is a failure rate tied to the certification. And Officer Dylan Gergel, who is now our OWI expert, has reached that certification status. Officer Luke Joswick filled the void that we had on our firearms unit. That was, again, Dean Haig retired, and he was our lead fire instructor, not only for the department, but as you recall, we're part of that Lakes training group. So Pewaukee, Shaniqua, Delafield, and us, we combine resources to all provide state certified instructors, and then have our staff come through those trainings on a quarterly basis for both defense and arrest tactics and our firearms training. And it's just a very efficient way for us to do this, where we could each provide knowledge and instructors and certifications. It makes that part efficient, and then we can all get our staff through. And not only is it efficient in the training aspect from an instructor standpoint, but now we're all on the same page because we do live and die by that mutual aid. We always are helping each other out because we may have one or two officers on at a time. So now we're coming from the same type of training. So Luke was certified in firearms as a firearms instructor. Detective Paula Hoffa received a recognition from the Waukesha County District Attorney's Office and the Waukesha Victim Assistance during National Crime Victims or Crime Rights Week for outstanding service to crime victims. She was the only law enforcement officer recognized with that, which speaks to her ability to really help crime victims through some very trying investigations, usually very sensitive in nature. She also received a commendation award from the Muskego Police Department. Paula is one of our negotiators on the SCIT, and she responded to a shots fired domestic violence incident in Muskego. And not only did she assist that call in her capacity as a negotiator, but as you can imagine, officers were being fired at from the residents while they responded to this call. They had an all-hands-on-deck approach and needed some assistance with the crime victims. And Paula was able to put together fantastic statements to help prove the elements of the crime and ultimately bring forward the charges needed for this particular incident. Officer Zach Bell received a letter of commendation from the Hartland Police Department. In addition, was also awarded a Christmas Parade commemorative pin from the Waukesha Police Department for assistance he provided during the Waukesha Christmas Parade event. He also received, on a different incident, a life-saving award for his assistance provided to the Shaniqua Police Department during a water rescue on Beaver Lake. And this is one incident I think ties in suburban law enforcement. He literally, him and a Shaniqua officer, got a boat that was stored, got it out of storage, got it over to the lake, and effected this rescue of a person that was in imminent danger of drowning, all within like a 10-minute time period, which is, some people can't even get their boat off the trailer in 10 minutes. And they were able to do that and effect this rescue. And literally on the way back, Officer Bell finds himself in a vehicle pursuit, which turned into a foot pursuit, and then ultimately had to use force to take an individual into custody. So you go from one extreme of saving someone's life on a water rescue to now protecting the village from a criminal at large and trying to evade an arrest. In coordination with the Hartland Rec Department and Fire Department, the Hartland Police Department participated in our second National Night Out, and we're looking forward to do that for our third annual National Night Out this August. We also participated in the Stuff the Squad food drive at Piggly Wiggly in coordination with the Canadian Pacific Holiday Train. And then I thought it was important for us to note this unfortunate and tragic event on Mansfield, where we had that fire, which led to 2 suicides and ultimately 4 homicides. So I wanted to capture that for our records, because that was one that was a horrific event for not just the community, but for our police department responders as well. I then go into talking some of our cooperative efforts. We do take great pride as a small police department cooperating with our neighbors and our other law enforcement agencies within specifically Waukesha County, but sometimes even further than that. And that brings a very efficient, effective service to the village of Hartland, and doesn't bear all the costs that can come with that. No police department's ever set up for that worst case scenario event. We do always rely on mutual aid when things exceed our resources, and we put those packages together pre-planned so we're able to effectively handle those or handle anything that would come our way. We do that through our Suburban Critical Incident Team. That's that SWAT team component. 9 agencies in Waukesha County make up that unit. We have tactical operators on the SWAT team. We have negotiators, and then we also just formed that technology resource group. So they actually are in charge of any technology that we use to come to a safe resolution in those type of critical incidents. One of the primary ones that they utilize is drones. So they can have both interior and exterior drone operability and keep operators safe while gathering intelligence, and hopefully not just our operators and officers, but anyone in their time of crisis. We also utilize that major investigations unit. This was used during our Mansfield incident, and it really paid off well for us. As tragic as that event went, from a police department perspective, it couldn't have went smoother as far as our investigation went, and that's because of these agreements and our training that we already have in place and are able to work together well with each other. In regards to this incident, the Wisconsin Crime Lab, who only comes out for major incidents, basically homicides, they've asked me to attend a tour at the Madison Crime Lab and to speak on how effective we were able to work together during this incident. So that's something that they even recognize. It was just a great partnership all the way around. But the major investigation unit does incorporate those agencies listed. Every agency provides personnel, provides selective and specialized training in different topics like photography, collection of evidence, interviewing of suspects, and at basically a push of a button, we can put out a page and get that unit at our disposal. So we did that in our emergent circumstances for Mansfield, but we also use them with search warrants. We had internet crime against children search warrant, and they're very labor intensive to gather evidence. They're a great use of those resources when you can all come together, get something done in hours and not days type of thing. We have our SMART team, our Suburban Mutual Assistant Response Team. That's comprised of Jefferson, Kenosha, Milwaukee, Racine, Walworth, and Waukesha County law enforcement agencies. So basically, we can put out a request and have up to 70 law enforcement officers respond to our community. So this is for non-pre-planned events, but a true emergency, and these would be utilized in any type of natural disaster type event. So think tornado coming through town, trail derailment, anything like that. We can effectively handle those resources by just putting out a quick call. We obviously dispatched to our Waukesha County Communications Center. And that's a joint effort with all the Lake Country Police Departments, amongst others throughout Waukesha County. We also are part of that Waukesha County Civil Disturbance Unit, and that unit was very active in the last couple of years. We've seen that activity tame down a little bit, which is a good thing for us, but obviously we have some political events coming to town in the next year or so, and that can be right back to being utilized, because that's where they come into play, to make sure that those remain peaceful events. And Judge K, we're not an active member of the Waukesha County Metro Drug Unit as far as assigning personnel there. That would be a great thing to have, because none of our jurisdictions within Waukesha County are without drug abuse. But due to our staffing needs, we removed that unit to bring that back to a patrol response. But we do work together well with that drug unit. We share intelligence, and we work with them on any major drug activity. Moving on to Judge K was just here talking about the Lake Country Court. It's a pretty effective partnership. Best part of that is it's all user fee based. So it's all 100% financed through that portion of the court cost fine that the 20 municipalities issue throughout the year. Just highlight some of our programs that we have in place, and just kind of going through a couple of them quickly. But our medication collection site, we continue to do that in both our east and west lobby. And as you guys hear me, every time we do a spring and fall drug take back through the Drug Enforcement Administration, we are always one of the top communities within Waukesha County, and that's in comparison to the city of Waukesha, Menominee Falls, New Berlin, Brookfield, communities literally 4 to 7 times our size. So we definitely utilize that well. A program that we have here in Hartland that makes us a little different than some is we institute an ownership zone program. So every officer is assigned an ownership zone. So a specific area of the village, we have it all mapped out, they're numbered, and these we monitor for quality of life issues. Kind of that broken windows theory of policing. So if you set the standard high, you don't have to worry about the standard deteriorating and then dealing with issues, bigger issues as they grow from smaller issues. So think abandoned vehicles, any type of other type of issues along those, garbage at the curb, anything like that that is a village ordinance violation. We proactively check those areas to stay on top of them to make sure the community is staying safe and in good order. Another 2 things we utilize out of that ownership zone outside of those specific areas is we assign our schools an ownership zone. So we have a school liaison officer basically that works with the schools to make sure safety plans are up to standard, that make sure that we have correspondence with those and are aware of them, and have just a good relationship with the schools and if the case we ever do have a critical type incident. I have been in conversation with our local schools. There was some initial talk about a partnership where some community fund dollars from the school board could be used to bring on a school resource officer. Unfortunately, a lot of the superintendents have recently left, so I kind of got to rebuild some of those conversations. But I am hopeful we can maybe bring that program online here in the village of Hartland to be shared amongst our schools here in the village proper, our Lake Country Lutheran, our Hartland Lakeside School District, our St. Charles, and to keep the patrol officers out of the schools on a day-to-day type call basis, have that school resource officer handle those events, also build those positive relationships for all the school-age children, not only coming when there's a negative type of event, and then of course, doing any type of positive programming like drug abuse resistance or stranger danger or online safety or any of the many topics that we can implement at the different grade levels of the school. So that's kind of one of my wish lists and my hopes that we can partner with the schools when they get their leadership in place. As you know, we have community notifications. You guys saw a couple of those come out. We work with WCC on those. And although we had a couple of those recently, they all, by and large, were very successful and did what we needed them to do. YLA accreditation, you heard me talk about that. We meet all our required standards for that apply to the Hartland Police Department. We just were reaccredited in 2021, so we'll be seeking reaccreditation. It's a 3-year cycle in 2024, and that is a labor-intensive process, but it is one that doesn't allow you to become complacent in your practices with the police department. Keeps you current with best practice and make sure you're doing the right thing for the right reason at the right times. We brought our Citizens Academy post-COVID back. We had our first one after COVID last year. It was a success. We're bringing that back this spring as well, and that's a partnership between the Lake Country Police Departments. And then we continue to do our Shop with Cops program. One thing I'll point out on our quality of local police that I think is important is the amount of specific experience we have here just in Hartland time. So we've had officers join us, myself included, from other agencies. We're not adding that type of time to fluff that number. This is the amount of time that people have experience here in the village of Hartland. And that experience is really irreplaceable. We have record management systems, but that data is only as good as the data goes in and as you have time to do. And as we all would believe, it's a good system. It's never as user-friendly as I think whoever develops those things try to do. So this is that type of quality service is far outweighs any type of record management system or data that you can have, is that personal knowledge and that connection with the community. I'm gonna kind of flip through just to go through. We talk about our vision and mission, and then have our command structure that just kind of paints a picture of what our department looks like. I obviously have myself and a deputy chief. We have 2 lieutenants, one on early team, one on late team. Then we have our administrative or clerical staff. We have our investigation team where 2 detectives are assigned, technically 1.5. And then we have our day team, early team, late team officers. And all those times are showing that Hartland service time. And then we just try to put a face with the names, and you'll see each of the next pages kind of showing our command staff, our investigation staff, what our day team staff look like in 2022, what it looked like on early team, and then also what it looked like on late team. That brings us to our activity report. Our call volume did increase in 2022 to 12,454. Kind of brought us back in line with those pre-COVID type numbers. So some of that COVID response, while we were trying to figure out what we were dealing with, we tried to limit public contact where it was possible. Think minor infraction traffic stops, minor assist fire or EMS type calls where someone was sick and just wanted fire to check them out. There's nothing a police officer is going to do other than look at them, so why expose an officer for that type of thing? Any life safety event, officers still responded to. Kind of just breaks down our different contacts, and what we try to highlight is our time drivers. So what are we spending a lot of our time on? And as you've all heard me say, police work has changed in the sense of it used to be you get a call, you either go knock on a door or find out who the person involved is, you have a conversation, you kind of go from there. Now everything's downloading phones and computers and getting warrants and subpoenas, and that whole investigative piece becomes much more labor intensive. So as you don't see like a skyrocketing of numbers, we are skyrocketing in the efforts to bring successful conclusion to our cases. And then obviously with our Mansfield incident, that did technically bring 4 homicides here to the village of Hartland. So you see a major increase there on a number that we don't look to have, but that was due to that one incident. So that is our activity, and then gives you that 10-year time frame to kind of compare it to in a nutshell. And then it takes us to a page I like to highlight where we talk about our operational complaints and then our operational compliments. We did receive 2 complaints in 2022, and again, coming from another agency, I think that speaks volumes to the professionalism of our officers. Because even when they are doing the right thing for the right reasons at the right time, people aren't always happy with those outcomes because we're not usually telling them the best of news for them. And we still only ended up getting 2 complaints. One complaint was in regards to a after park hour violation. And that was where someone left the bar intoxicated, was walking through a park. And as you recall, we had some park vandalism issues around that time of the year. So we were doing some extra patrols of our parks to try to mitigate those from continuing to happen. And the officer involved located a subject after hours walking through the park. And the subject saw the car, took off running, which let the officer know that doesn't seem like that is a good thing. So the officer drove after that particular individual onto like the walking path until they jumped into the woods. And then he illuminated that individual with a spotlight, called him out, and eventually that person came out. They were a little bit intoxicated, weren't very happy with the police, felt that if a police officer was in a park after hours, they should have their red and blue lights on to let people know it's the police. But that doesn't help us catch the criminals when we tell them we're coming. So that's not an effective way for us to handle that, and that's not a state statute or policy requirement of the officer. So that was one of their complaints, and then the other complaint they said is the officer refused to identify themselves. And this is where our squad camera program would really pay dividends for us. Again, 2 complaints isn't the end of the world, but that's a real quick us playing the video because I had 2 officers there. They identified themselves several times, both of them independently verify that. They tried to give the individual a business card, and he just refused to take it and wanted a citation with the officer's name on. They were trying to just give the individual a warning and tell him to walk it off and walk home, and would not leave till he was cited. So the lieutenant eventually just met his wish, because we're a community-oriented, customer service-driven police department, issued him that citation, and because he wanted that proper documentation. So as you see documented here, you kind of see like a 1.5 kind of thing. That complaint had those 2 separate aspects. We found one of them to be unfounded, and then we found one of them to be exonerated. The refusing to identify himself was unfounded because we can prove that they tried to do that on numerous attempts. And then the did not turn on the squad lights was exonerated, and what that means is they did do that, but they're allowed to do that, so it's not an issue. And then our second complaint was in regards to our new route of our hometown celebration parade. It wasn't really in regards to the route, but our hardening of that route. As you all know, we took those precautions because I think if we don't in this day and age and have an issue, I think we're not doing our jobs to keep the community safe. We did that. We worked well with the fire department and DPW to really harden that route and keep it a safe parade for all to enjoy. But in doing so, we had someone that was late to that closure and felt like he should just be allowed to go through our parade route and drive through it. That wasn't going to happen because we weren't going to do that kind of thing. Once it was shut down, it was shut down. And what ultimately ended up happening is a relative of that person's that they were supposed to meet, who was elderly, went to go put the lawn chairs away after they weren't able to come. They didn't just park down the road and walk up. They just went home because they weren't happy they couldn't come through. And that lady ended up falling and hitting her head on the road. And if you all remember, we had to delay the start of the parade. That was for that particular incident until we were able to provide aid through EMS. So that incident was found exonerated, and yes, we did not allow him through, but that was the guidance given to the officers to not allow them through that area while we were starting our parade. So another exonerated complaint. And then that brings me to our last section here is, well, we got 2 complaints. We had 35 individuals that went above and beyond and took time out of their day to recognize professionalism, dedication, going above and beyond the call for service in numerous different ways. We had 16 different employees recognized, and then 6 department-wide for our assistance provided to the Waukesha Christmas Parade or a plethora of other events. That recognition was given to us. So while we had those couple complaints for doing a hard job, we far outweigh it with the amount of compliments that come in from the public, and that's a year after year trend for us, and we plan on continuing to do. And that is the 2022 Police Department Annual Report. Again, I'll take any questions if anyone has them. Otherwise, I'm always available if something comes to you later on.
Got one question. Looking at the drunk driving arrests, looks like the last 2 years they've doubled. Any indication what you think that is from?
So one of them is previously mentioned in the fact of Officer Dylan Gergel is very committed to OWI enforcement. He is basically not just a residential expert, but a regional expert, and he takes that very seriously, and he's very proactive on his OWI enforcement. In addition to some of the newer officers we have, are very diligent in looking for those type of violations. So it's just really a new makeup of that late team, bringing back some very good high-level training to identify those type of issues and then investigate them properly.
I think the compliments, like you said, it's a trend. You guys, the report from last year, I remember seeing the same thing and saying the same thing. A lot more people complain than pass out compliments, and it's probably a 10-to-1 ratio. So the fact that you've got that many compliments really does speak volumes to your work as a department. So great job.
Thank you.
Chief, I agree. The community just has a lot of respect for the officers in the village of Hartland. I hear it time and time again, so kudos to you and the entire staff.
It's easy when you got great staff, so they really come together well. Being a part of a different department and a lot of different teams throughout my career, this is one I can really say everyone's strengths come together, and they all are very hard workers and take their job very serious and are all very professional. So I'm blessed in that regard, and the village of Hartland is as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well put together. Thank you. The next item that we have on our agenda is discussion and consideration of memorandum of understating, which is MOU, between Waukesha County Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, Aging and Disability Resource Center Adult Protective Services, APS, unit, and the Hartland Police Department.
All right, we threw a lot of initials at you guys, so hopefully you keep those all straight. At the end of the day, there's state statute that requires our adult protective services to put agreements like this in place to freely give information back and forth to law enforcement. I think a lot of you probably would scratch your head to be like, that seriously just doesn't happen as an automatic. I think that would be the common sense approach. But when you're dealing with these type of medical issues and other things, there's a lot of protections that go in and become involved in that. And this is to help our elderly or even our adult population with any type of needs work through, like financial frauds to elder abuse to any other of the different things that our Health and Human Services gets involved in, and allows them to freely exchange that information without any type of penalty or issue down the road. So this is really just for us to enter into this agreement. It's been brought up many times with our HHS. They've worked well with us, but I think this will do nothing but improve that relationship. This MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, is going out to all Waukesha County law enforcement agencies, not just the Village of Hartland Police Department. And it is anticipated that we'll all sign on to this and then again have that on file and allow for that free flowing of information to bring any criminals that prey on our elderly or adults that have special needs to justice. And this has been reviewed by our village attorney without any issues.
I'll make a motion to approve the MOU, or the Memorandum of Understanding.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the memorandum of understanding between Waukesha County, between all these agencies and the Hartland Police Department. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. The next item we have is discussion and consideration of a budget amendment for 2022.
So this is something we've done the last couple of years. As you know, we take a very conservative approach with the budget. Overall, in 2022, we ended up overexpending the budget by $69,809, or 0.88%, less than 1% over. Our revenues for that same time were $240,000 over budget, so we actually have a surplus of $170,000. The point of the amendment is just to kind of put our expenditures in line to show that we didn't overspend for the year compared to the revenues. So essentially, we're building inspection permits last year was actually much higher. That number is decreasing. But the point of this is to bring things more in line. As you can see, interest income increased significantly. And then we would have contingency to show that essentially it's for the financial statements. It just shows that we are in line with our expenditures. I mean, 0.88% across that much money is pretty good, so.
Ryan, that excess is gonna go to the park board budget then, is that what I understand?
Yeah, probably.
9. Put the names in a hat.
No, nobody gets that.
I would make a motion that we approve the budget amendment for 2022.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the budget amendment for 2022. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Where does the excess go?
To the fund balance.
Announcements.
It was a pretty productive week last week for the rec department. The staff has raised $29,500 for Hartland's hometown celebration. Last week, it was Cassandra's Motorsports that came in as the first presenting sponsor with $15,000. And then right at the end of the week, Culver's came in with a $5,000 sponsorship. We also had a Merton Feed Company come in with a $500. So we've had 16 businesses donating. We have met all 5 levels have at least one sponsor, so that's great. We are still looking for sponsorships. 29.5 gets us about just over halfway. So I'm setting a deadline of March 15th to try to create some urgency to get that all in so we can move forward with marketing pieces as well. Summer camp registration opens March 1st, and we are now hiring for camp counselors and camp coordinators, or a camp coordinator. It should be a fantastic program this year, and we've begun working on the summer program guide, so that's coming as well. And this past week was also a great week for T-ball. We've jumped to 131 enrollments.
Awesome.
I did a lot of talking tonight, so I'll keep this brief. We do have an officer that's anticipating retirement in 2024. He does a lot of great things for the Hartland Police Department, and we are looking to start replacing some of those things with our younger staff and bring them up to speed with a lot of the knowledge and experience he has before that all walks out the door on us. 2 of those areas are defense and arrest tactics state certified instructor. We have just recently selected Rachel Wendago to fill that role. She'll be attending an instructor development course and then ultimately a 2-week long, I believe it's 2 weeks long still, a defense and arrest tactic course to become state certified. And then Dylan Gergel will be taking over his field training officer responsibilities. So he's going to be attending our field training officer program, actually already attended, and then he will be implementing those skills with our current recruit, Officer Tyler Martins, for the last phase that's coming up here of his road training.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, on Thursday we were at WCTC for a career fair. Actually got 3 applications out of it. All 3 of them are trained firefighter EMTs at this time, so they'll be going through the process of onboarding and all the interviews. I have 3 also going to the Police and Fire Commission on the 14th of March. Of those, 1 is a paramedic, full-time firefighter paramedic, and so he's looking forward. He was actually here. He was one of our full-timers at one time, and then got hired in Pewaukee, and he's coming back, so he was going to work some part-time shifts and whenever he can. So Our ambulance 4351 is at the body shop right now, getting repairs from the deer hit that we had a couple months back. And then, right after that, it'll go down to Badger Ford to have the DPF canister replaced, which we've been waiting 8 months for now, so.
Thank you, Chief.
Great, thanks, Chief. Thank you, Chief.
Just recently, or every 3 years, the DNR comes in and does a sanitary inspection, goes through all of our well houses and all of our towers. It was my first year doing that, and getting to know the DNR rep was a good experience, and kind of hearing how Hartland has been always in good standing with the DNR, and our DNR rep is a very good thing. We passed that inspection with flying colors, so just reporting on that. Within the last week too, our well number 6 was completely rehabbed and is back up and running. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Don't forget, last week you guys fixed the main break and then it broke again.
It didn't break again.
That sounds fun.
It broke, and then they turned it back on, and it was further down the line as well. So there was 2 spots that broke initially. So
Sorry.
more digging.
But thank you.
Yep.
Could DPW comment on the ice rink, if it's going to survive, or are we done for the year? I'm just curious.
I think I could answer that.
Well,
It's toast.
So, I have been very excitedly trying to get that rink open again. Unfortunately, we've had a very mild winter with consistently above freezing temperatures, which has caused the ground to be too warm to maintain ice on the rink. And despite our enthusiasm, every effort has been made, and unfortunately, the ice is never solid enough to reopen. So we are approaching March now. That is, the first week of March is when we closed the rink last year. We did have a couple of good weeks. It's just been one of those winters, we can't control the weather. But we have been doing our best to try to get it open, and unfortunately, it just didn't happen. So part of that too is as Leo is explaining to me, there's the pole in the center of the rink actually kind of warms everything up as well. So there's the warm ground temperatures coming up there, keeping it warm. So there are options, that we can explore with coils to possibly keep it colder for these types of conditions. So that's something we can look into for next year, but it's very likely that the rink will be coming down in the next couple of weeks.
Which is understandable.
While we're doing that, can we leave the banner sponsorships up as long as possible?
That is also something we actually talked about today, so.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Hultquist?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Connor?
No, I'm good.
Good? I don't have anything.
I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This meeting's adjourned.